Welcome back. So, we've already been talking about line now. You've done some projects. We understand what a thumbnail sketch is. This is the sketch we did in the example talking about using axes to try to create symmetrical balance in human-made objects. In this case, we put several objects together. So we're going to talk about a few things that are components of composition before we move on to our next line technique, which is crosshatching. So if you look at this composition, which is the arrangement of all of the parts that fit within the edges, the parameter of the format you're working with. So everything corner to corner, edge to edge is all part of what you want to be an integrated, complete sense of whole composition. So if we look at this, one of the first ways you talk about composition, I just threw a piece of tracing paper over to show, is perception has us saying that whatever we recognize as a shape, we want to give a name. So in this case, you can sort of, you look at this and you think, okay, some kind of vases, some kind of container. But our perception will find us looking at these three objects because they are closed shapes, and we want to not only recognize them, we want to name them. We could even say, because of those few lines that are visible, that there's some kind of a table. So you begin to try to give everything a name. In design, in art and design, the name for all of those shapes, so for example, that shape that's made up by the lip there, the shape on the interior, the shape that is this irregular form that comes down and goes around the object sitting in front of it. Anything that you recognize and want to give a name, you sort of point to and say, that's a, fill in the blank, vase, cup, whatever. One of the terms for that is positive, meaning it's sort of activated space. So all of these shapes that make up these three particular sort of vase container shape, those would all be considered positive space. And the synonym for that, a term that can be used with the same reference, the same meaning as positive space, is figure. Meaning those are the shapes you look at and you identify as that something I'm looking at. So positive space or figure. All of the shapes that happen because they are the shapes that fit around the edges of those positive spaces, around the edges of the figure. All of that other area is generally referred to as either negative space, and once again, the synonym would be ground. So you have positive and negative space, or you have figure and ground. You can refer to those pairs and you're referring to the same thing. The space that has contained shapes that we want to identify and give a name versus the shapes that are formed around the edges of those shapes that we want to give a name. So the figure, ground, positive or negative space. That's going to be a building block that we're going to use for a future project.